Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 6 of The Great Pretender. And oh my gosh, my voice is back. I've got a little bit of a cough left, but it's manageable. I'm much better than I was for episodes 4 and 5. That first case wrapped up really well. I was very pleased and excited with how it ended. I thought that was a great finale. Salazar being the one to turn Cassano in, and then Ed and all them making out with like millions of dollars each, and Ed saying, I want to work with you, Laurent, but I need to go take care of my own loose ends back in Japan and make up for the people that I scammed. So I'm going to take a break, hold off, maybe in a couple years, I'll come and find you. So we'll see how many years passes. Like, what does that lead to? Obviously it's only episode 6, so they're gonna meet up again, but what are the circumstances? How's it gonna go? I'm so curious, right? And I only have one comment before we start. Starlet Mochi said that the creator of the series commented that it is confirmed Laurent is bisexual. I'm like, okay, so Laurent is bisexual. I'm all about it. It makes sense. This character, he clearly has a thing for Edamura. So even if Edamura decides after a few years that he doesn't want to become a con man, Laurent ain't gonna let him go. No way. Not as good of a con man as Edamura is. That's just not gonna happen, right? So I liked the first caper. It was a nice, cool case. I thought it was fun. And now that we're gonna have like a little bit of a time skip, maybe a big time skip, we'll have to see. I'm curious to see what's going to have changed with Abby, Laurent, and Edamura during that time. I'm going to assume that Abby and Laurent are not going to give their money away like Ed did. So what do we do with that, right? What do we do with it? And at that point, the cons aren't the necessity of the money. It's because you want to just do the con, right? So we'll see. But I'm really excited to jump into this new case and see what we get. Or if it's even a case, it may not be. It may just be a episode between. I don't know how the series is going to do that. If they're going to have case by case, or if we're going to have an episode between, how's that going to work? I'm curious how the structure of that's going to play out, but we'll find out, right? So I hope y'all are excited. I'm ready to go. So we are going to start episode 6 of The Great Pretender, and we're going to do so here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh, Great Pretender, I love you so much. I love this series. And honestly, what a way to wheel you back in. I love that they don't give you like no context. They just show you Makoto and Abby in a plane about to crash. And you're like, well, out of jail, so... This episode was very straightforward. I feel like it was very straightforward, but at the same time, I feel bad for Makoto in a lot of ways because, bless his heart, Makoto, he says that he's done, and there's that, but we're going to talk about that, right? So Singapore Sky is our second case, and we have Abby. Abby, in the poster, she takes the centerfold. In the last one, it was Makoto, like, coming down from hanging over the Hollywood sign. And here, it's Abby. She's posed next to the planes, or what seems to be like where the race is going to be. So that's curious. I will never get over praising the style. I was talking with AJ on Discord, another patron on Discord, and we were talking about Wit Studio and how we were comparing them to Mappa. And I don't do like the animation studio wars. I personally think KyoAni is like one of the best, and because their artwork is like jaw-droppingly gorgeous. But they have a distinct style. You can tell a KyoAni production right off the bat looking at it. You can tell a Studio Ghibli production. You can tell a Mappa production. The cool thing is, I feel like Wit Studio, they take a lot of risks. There's a lot of animation that Wit Studio does that does not look similar. Like, I could pick you out a KyoAni thing instantly, and Studio Ghibli and Mappa could tell you what they are. But Wit Studio, they do the production on this, and it's not really like anything else I've seen. And a lot of that is from Sadamoto from Neon Genesis designing the characters. So there's that. But just the art style, the saturation, the blocky colors, I will praise it all day long because it's so unique and different, and I absolutely love it. But We get a lot of Abby focus in this episode where she's got the unlucky number 13 and she's just like a glutton for punishment. She's just pushing herself like she's got a death wish. And even Laurent kind of points it out. He's like, should we call an ambulance next or just go ahead and get the hearse? You know? And one of the things, like, what will you ride next? A wheelchair? The funny thing is Laurent has millions of dollars that we know of, and he has the same damn Hawaiian shirt. It's like, don't blame him, though. Once you find a shirt you really like, it's hard to pass it up. But I just love that he's just, like, sitting there being like, you know, it's great. But I love that she just flips him off, like, no. And so he's like, what does he tell her? He says, how about some work? So it's kind of like Laurent's getting the gang all together, right? Everybody's gone their separate ways. Abby's doing her own thing, racing motorbikes and whatnot, but clearly hurting herself. And Laurent's like, how about we put your talents to use instead of you having a death wish? And she's like, okay. He's like, that guy's coming out soon too. Can't imagine who that guy is. And she's like, not interested. He's like, don't say that. And he says, the problem is they turned over a new leaf while he's in jail. Obviously, he heard that from Kudo, right? And he's going back to honest work. And so, yeah, the thing about it is we follow kind of briefly Makoto in the 2 years that he's in prison. So he turned in all the money and he served his sentence, like his 18 months, right? In jail. And, like, I'm glad he grew his hair back out. Because seeing Makoto with a shaved head, not a look that I want to see. I'm like, no. But he seems like, and Makoto has such a pure heart, right? Edamura has such a pure heart that he thinks about things. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to turn over a new leaf and get honest work, which does check with his character, because back at the start of the series, he just wanted to have an honest job and he couldn't find anywhere to work that would take him and hire him. So when the guy here offers him this contracted job working as a mechanic, Makoto's like, okay, yeah, I can do this. Sure. I can be fine with that. And Kudo has been keeping Laurent in the know, being like, hey, we've got business abroad, Mr. Edamura. Let's have a party, you know. Let's get the gang all back together. And the thing about it is that I don't blame Ed for not wanting to go back to that life and wanting to have an honest life. But the thing is, he almost seems so dead-eyed when he just goes back to the honest work. Like, while he's in jail, he just seems kind of like, no, I don't want to do that. And then he goes back, takes his effects. He sees the mom walking with the little girl and thinks like, okay, I'm back out. I've got, you know, a chance to have a decent life. And he goes past a field, and I guess the guys playing football are saying it's called cornering. Which seems like what he ends up being in. He's stuck in a corner, right? And he ends up going to the shrine and praying, and then he gets the job. And they're like, oh, congratulations on getting out, Makoto. And he gives him the 2 years worth of rent because he's just a nice guy like that, right? And then he goes back to the apartment, and the figurine that he got from the capsule machine that's new is that of a peasant. Not a king anymore, right? Served time, no longer a king. Starting over again from the bottom. He got bumped from the top of the ladder down to the bottom of it. And the thing is, he sends Laurent a message saying that I thought a lot about this. Saying, I think I'll leave the party after all. And he says, during my life in prison, my thinking and way of life changed a lot. And so he goes here to the mechanic place and gets this guy that looks like Fuyu-chan. He looks like Fuyu-chan from Neon Genesis, which is kind of hilarious because it's Sadamoto who designed Fuyu-chan's character. So it looks just like him. It's like if him and Pixis from Attack on Titan were combined. And he says, oh, with you, it's you. He says, and so he's like, go get changed up in the back. And Makoto, who works for Nakashima, he says, no matter who the target is, we shouldn't trick others. And which, again, that's a very reasonable stance to take about the confidence man. From what we've seen so far, though, Laurent and them, they do kind of have like a Robin Hood type of mentality where they do give a lot of the money back to the people that were essentially conned out of it. But again, doesn't necessarily make what they did right, and that's kind of Makoto's issue with it. And he's like, I always wake up at the same time, work with sweat on my brows, take a bath, and sleep. But you can see, like, even as he lays in the pool, in the tub, he, like, spits out the water and slips. So He has this idea that he just goes to work, sleeps, does the same thing every day, thinks that that's the way things are supposed to be. He's like, I think that kind of life is what happiness is. But it's like, does he? That's the big question, because at the end of the episode, when Laurent is trying to tell him the story, Ed listens. It's like, I think that Ed tries to fool himself. I think he wanted to go back to it, but was trying to fool himself otherwise, because the police officer was like, you know, you need to do your mom right and get a decent, honest job. So then we come to find out that this guy the whole time was tricking him into thinking he was a mechanic, right? Maybe he is. Maybe, I feel like since Laurent tampered with the propeller as a way of trying to con Makoto further into the job, I feel like Makoto is a decent mechanic. He just, you know, probably still needs some more work, right? And again, you could tell, like, from the way that Makoto is designed, his hair is like drooping even though it's grown back. So it almost seems like he's not happy with where he's at, but he doesn't want to go back to Laurent necessarily. And so he gives him this big spiel about air travel, and he's like, Laurent, I'm sorry. Forget about me. We won't cross paths again. But Laurent is not satisfied, right? Laurent's not having it. He's like, no. Laurent, I feel like Laurent's a type of guy that he's like, if he wants something, he's not going to let it just get out of his reach. And he wants Edamura. I'm like, okay, all right. So then we come back to the U.S. And of course, not only do they tell us it's the U.S. from the crawl on the screen, but also we cut to the boss, who has the American flag coffee cup, which I wish wasn't a thing, but it very much is. And he kind of, you know, the way his character's designed resembles certain people, you know. Yeah, and just you make what you will out of that. But he says, Chris, your serious work attitude was highly praised. It's very unfortunate. And she's just like, is it because she's like, why am I getting fired? Because I rejected your advances? And he's really mean and like says that he would never touch her or anything. And she's like, well, that's sexual harassment. And he's like, well, go ahead and try to sue me. We'll fight you for years and win. And she's like, I really just need this job to help my family, and I don't know why I'm being fired. But she can't do anything about it. And he says, you won't be paid for the time we spent talking. Serves you right. So then we cut to Las Vegas, which at the roulette table, and Cynthia is wheeling him in because he's got the blush on his face like he's been drinking. Cynthia's like wheeling him in, and she's going under the con name of Jennifer. She really likes that blue dress. She's in it constantly. And he says, I told you that was reckless, Jennifer. And she says, it's Chris. I said that. We shouldn't waste money like that. We'll get more money anyway. And so she knows Chris, the Cynthia woman does, and we find that out later. And then she convinces him to go to this underground fight ring that they've just conveniently like a pop-up shop set up with Laurent, and they have it all scripted of who's going to win and who's not. And there's like all these names. There's like Abigail Jones versus Nicole Celestia. There's like Donna Dorothy, Evelyn Cherry, Melissa Lilly. They all have like names involving flowers. And he puts down $100,000 saying anything can happen in a match, right? And Laurent's like, yes, that is correct. And then we have Abigail, who, this is perfect for Abigail because she wants to like get her pent up frustrations out. And a fight ring seems like the way to go for her and her muscle bound attitude. And she ends up winning, and he makes even more money back. And Cynthia reveals that it's all part of a scam. And she's like, well, you could play the system. She's like, well, the promoter, it's all in the past. Like, Cynthia is a great manipulator because she gives just enough information to get the Danny guy hooked. Just enough, right? And obviously, his name being Danny is great too. You could tie that to Donnie, I suppose. That's all I'll say on the matter. But I find it funny that she manipulates him so easily, being like, just giving him just a little sliver of information, but then withholding just enough to where it seems like she shouldn't talk anymore. She's like, well, you know, it's all the promoter. We shouldn't say anymore. It's in the past. Like, that's such a good, like, reel him in moment, right? And he gets what she's saying. and is like, okay, I'm going to go back. She's like, and so you're getting revenge. This should make it worthwhile, right? He thinks that she's getting revenge on the former promoter and he can be a part of it and get a cut of it. And she's like, bet on Abigail tomorrow. I'll be found out if it's a go. Meanwhile, at the Nakanoshima Heavy Industries, he's working on the propeller and everything and gives him like all the advice about the planes and how they're the most beautiful machinery possible. And he talks about flying and how it defies gravity and allows him to like be free. And for Makoto, that's all he wants. He just wants to be free of the reputation that he's had and be free to do some honest work like he originally wanted to, free of that stigma caused by his past and his family. But it doesn't work out that way. He's like, do you want to show that talent in an air race as a mechanic? And at first we said air race, I was like, Makoto cannot fly a plane. He's not been taught that. But it's as a mechanic. And when he said that he'd been hired, I was like, I wonder if it's Laurent. I really did, if Laurent tracked him down. But the truth of the matter is, he was in on it the whole time. And he gives him the flask, and it's black vinegar to drink out of. I hate vinegar so much. Like I'll do pickles, but that's pushing it. Black licorice is disgusting, and so is vinegar. So the idea of them together is blech. And he says, stop complaining and show the world your talent. Which, there is a part of it that's like, yeah, Makoto has a skill, and it is kind of wasted with him just doing this job as a mechanic. I mean, it would be handy if he knows how to be a mechanic. Laurent could use that kind of skill, but it's kind of like, you're wasting it just working at this little job. You should be a little bit more ambitious, Makoto, and Makoto doesn't want to be ambitious. So, can we blame Laurent for trying to reel him in? And again, when he asks if Makoto knows English, that should have been a sign, too, that his clients were going to be Laurent and Abigail and Cynthia. But he goes. Meanwhile, we cut back to the ring, and the Danny guy takes all of his money out. Now, here's the thing. Cynthia did not specify in that correspondence with him the night before how much money he should take out. She's like, you should just bet on Abigail. She was leaving it to his greed to try to take out as much as he wanted, because he takes out everything in his savings account, and the guy's like, should I call the police? Is there something going on? Like, this is a lot of money. And he puts the odds on Abigail. And Laurent even says, he's like, this is going to make our odds drop considerably if you're putting this much money on her. Are you sure you... It's like they gave him an out. They didn't specify how much money to use. And even Laurent was like, I don't know if you should bet this much money. That's going to be a big gamble and drop your odds. Like, they gave him an out. And he didn't want it. And Laurent's like, okay. May the goddess of luck smile upon the gambler. Here we go. And then he said the fish took the bait. And Abby's just sitting there like with her leg tapping, like she just wants, and you can tell the other girl doesn't like her at all. Like, Abigail's this is just part of her vice of getting by. She's just chasing that adrenaline. And she's a little bit of a loose cannon for Laurent, right? Because even Laurent, he can't control her actions. And she lets her anger get the better of her. And she just goes wild for a second. And attacks her. And Laurent's like, well, she's an idiot. And about goes Mike Tyson and bites her ear off. And you would think, he doesn't get mad. The Danny guy, he's fine with her biting the ear and doesn't think that's foul play. But then when the other girl beats the snot out of her, he's like, well, what about that? And Laurent's like, a match is a match. That's it. I love how cold his eyes get when he looks down at Danny. Laurent, he's like, anything can happen in a match. And his eyes look so cold. It's like, ah! So, yeah. And then, of course, the Danny guy gets the police. And there's nothing left there. They've all moved out. And the police officer's like, hey, you. He says, sue me for harassment. This isn't funny. And so, meanwhile, Laurent gets on to Abigail about being violently impulsive. And she's like, that's what's good about me. And she's like, I'm sorry about my impulsive violence. You should do something about your bunny-like sexual urges. So I don't know why Laurent has gotten involved in. Oh, she's like, we're going on this big mission because you have these sexual urges and you're doing all this for Makoto. I'm assuming that's it. Or there was a reason they were in the ring before then, and she's blaming it on that too. And he's like, how can you say that? This is good enough as a rehearsal. So she's like, a rehearsal? It's like, the real fish we're targeting is way bigger. And you'll need training when we get there. So he's suggesting that she's going to need to learn to fly a plane. Unless she already knew so. But she seems like she could drive the motorbikes. Like, she seems pretty apt at learning how to do those types of things. So Abigail's like, really? And she says she refuses. And he's like, oh, don't say that. Again, I don't know exactly why Abigail goes with Laurent if she really doesn't want to work for him. Unless she's just tsundere and that's just how she is. I don't know. You would think. But she clearly has a reason for following Laurent. It's just not been specified, right? And then we cut to where Chris lives in this mobile home outside in the desert where her kid's playing on the porch. And she's like, doesn't know how she's going to make ends meet. She like barely has enough cash. And then they said, happy birthday, and gave me a big bag. And I said, happy birthday, Chris, from your old friend in London. She's like, London? And she says, could it be? So she knew Cynthia. And there's all the money. I love Cynthia on the motorbike with her goggles and screaming in English, happy birthday, Chris. I love the idea, like, were Chris and Cynthia just friends? Was there something more? We don't know, but in any case, I love the idea that Cynthia's like, she basically probably got Loren to do this job with her, but she says, my friend needs some help. Let's get her some money back from this asshole. It's like, yes! So, I love that. I love the sunset sky and all the colors and her on the motorbike. It's absolutely gorgeous. Like, you can make that a screensaver, right? And then Makoto goes to the hangar on the island and tells those guys the same spiel that the man there told him, thinking that it's going to be this great thing. And he's like, and then he immediately recognizes Laurent's voice. And he gets so frustrated. Looking over, your accent hasn't changed though. And he's like, why are you here? And they're like, oh, did you forget? This is my island. So the air race is taking place on Cynthia's island that these oil tycoons have been invited to, right? You've been here too. And Makoto's like, well, damn it, I thought it was just deja vu. Look at him. He's like, no wonder it wasn't that. I'm like, congratulations. He's like, welcome to Team Confidence, our air race team. Laurent's like just ready to welcome Makoto back with open arms. And Makoto's like, absolutely not. You could, his top of his hair is grown out, but he still has some of the undercut there from when it was shaved. Mm-hmm. And he's like, no, you're confident, con artists. Stop your constant tricks. And then Cynthia's like, you're pure as always. And so there's a note says, arigato, 100 million yen to Shogo Nakanoshima. That's right. And he's like, it's always fun training youngsters. Yep. These two are our fishes this time. And Makoto's like, I'm not looking. He's so like against it. It's like he's sulking as expected. And Abby's like, fine, I want to know who they are. The sly looking one is Sam Ibrahim. And then the other one he says that looks like the cheerful hottie is Clark Ibrahim. So these two guys, what does he say? They're both, they are princes from a country with oil. And I like that Makoto's like, I don't know what this is, but I'm not taking part. He's like, no. It's like, I'm finally out of jail. And Cynthia looks kind of sympathetic towards him. Abby's like, don't care. And Laurent's like, you don't want to play with me? It's like, I'm going to lead an honest life now. And Cynthia, she's the reasonable, and she's like, you know what? It's true. We're not comrades. So one mistake and you're gone. And Abigail's like, we don't need your dead weight. I love that. She's like, but Laurent says, can I continue? He's like, I've shown you the two people we're going to play. Can I continue? And if Makoto was really not interested, he could have said no. But he doesn't, right? He looks at Laurent and nods, and that's all he needs. Pathfinder Air Race. Prince Sam is running a monopoly called the Pathfinder Air Race. He's like, so we'll participate in the Singapore round 2 months from now. So he's like, the fact that they're running Monopoly, he's like, they're running a con like what we just did with the underground fight ring. So we're going to invade the con and change it around. And we're going to take their $200 million fortune. And Makoto's like, $200 million? Well, I'm not doing it. Nope, that's high stakes, high risk. We'll get into even more jail trouble. And Abby's like, stay a virgin forever. And he's like, okay, you don't need to help with the bait. He's like, could we hire you purely as our mechanic? He's like, you don't have to be part of the con. Laurent's just like, whew. He's like, but what if you just fixed our planes? He's like, we shouldn't waste your skills, right? And Makoto's like, well, fine, if that's the case. And he's like, good. He's like, Abby, we're going to start practicing. Fly the plane from earlier. And she's like, the plane that touched by his dirty hands. He's like, I washed my hands. And I love her badger face. She's just like Abby's so condescending. Like, just, He's like, what? Why? Because I can't stand your face, personality, or lack of skills. My boss put me through strict training. And Laurent's like, I love Laurent and Cynthia are like, as he's like, I definitely have skills. And she says, then get in. And he's like, well, actually, so that's the thing. He says that he has all these skills and he worked on the engines, but she's like, if you feel so confident about this, then put it to the test. And then he falters a little bit, like, well, wait, maybe I don't feel as confident in this as I thought. He's like, I'm not good with high places. She's like, you flew over here. And so they're flying. I love that he's just like clinging to the window. I love that even the ocean, animation wise, even the ocean has like the little geometric shapes on top of the water surface, like fragments of light. It's beautiful. And they're like, wow, Abby's a really good pilot. Doesn't it feel amazing, Edamame? I love he's just screaming, and that's when the propeller phases out. And Abby's just like gets an adrenaline rush and is like, sweet, let's do this. The engine's blown. Oh, how terrible. And Laurent's like, yeah, did you think you became a top-notch engineer in just a few months? No. He's like, being a mechanic isn't that easy. You're basically a novice. We had him teach you to look like an engineer. You're a swindler after all. So yeah, he's like, you fooled us. You said you were going to be this mechanic. He's like, you didn't know enough to do that job. He's like, no, he didn't teach you enough in 2 months to, because when he said back there, he's like, how many years have I had you on the force? And Makoto's like, oh, I've only been here 2 months. That should have been foreshadowing that, yeah, in order to be a plane engineer, you have to do that job for years. Makoto learning in 2 months just isn't even feasible. And Laurent's like, who are you fooling? You're fooling nobody. You are a swindler. See, you're conning people. And then he's like, Abby, get rid of the plane. And then she's like, I'm getting out. And then she pulls the parachute and flies him out, like holding him with her legs. Oh my God. She's got him like braced with the legs. And then Cynthia says, did you tamper with the engine? He's like, well, maybe it's the formula. Maybe it's the fuel. It looks like it worked too well. And then she just drops him. So I don't know what's in the egg. I don't know if the egg was something that tampered with it or not, what that case was. But in any case, maybe he did tamper with it. But still, I don't think Makoto is ready to be assisting with any plane engines, right? So, So we're going to swindle 2 oil tycoons out of $200 million by infiltrating and rigging their own rigged monopoly race. That seems legit. And Abby knows how to fly a plane, so that seems like it could work. I'm sure that's why Laurent tracked her down, because she can fly a plane, and he knew that and knew he would need her for this. But he didn't need Edamura for this mission, but he wanted him. So, that's really curious. I wonder, since they're going as the Singapore team, if they're going to try to pass Edamura off, as such, if the people there are not going to realize he's Japanese or not. I don't know. But I'm really glad that we didn't waste too much time. Makoto, as good as your heart is, And as sure as you wanted to just be a pure soul doing good, I'm kind of glad you're back with Laurent and Cynthia and Abby. So hopefully this case will go fine, but we shall see, right? So I thought this was a great episode. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, I will be back very soon with more of The Great Pretender. Bye.